Good morning. Welcome to the Caregiver Child Connection Program by the Wellmet Charitable Foundation. My name is Minerva Villarreal, and I will be your foundation program I will be your facilitator for today's presentation. This session is being recorded and will be available on the Caregiver Child Connection website or our YouTube channel. This is Today, our expert presenter is Lucy Barylak, who will be talking to us about when enough is enough, setting personal boundaries as a caregiver. And with that, Lucy, would you please tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Hi, everybody. Good morning. So we have a bit of a glitch, so I'll introduce myself to you today. I received my master's degree in social work from the McGill University, and it's in Montreal, Canada. And I have to say that I've devoted my whole career to caregiving issues. I was instrumental in developing the Caregiver Support Center. I've done a lot of research, published articles. I wrote chapters in books, all dealing with caregiving issues. And as well, I received the Queen Jubilee Award from the Canadian Home Care Association for developing a coalition for caregivers across Canada. But one of the most important things that I do want to tell you about myself is that I was a caregiver for my mother for many, many years. So, again, good morning and welcome. The topic today is not easy. Setting limits, saying no, and setting boundaries is not easy. I know that from my own experience when I was caring for my mother, but I also know that it's very important to know your limits. So I hope that you can identify with this topic and hopefully make some changes in your life that supports your mental and physical well-being and allows you to have a balanced life while still caring for your loved one. So I do also want to share with you that my presentation today is going to be a little bit shorter because I really want to give all of you an opportunity to ask questions and share your experience in setting limits and boundaries and saying no. So let's go to the next slide. So let's look at what we're going to be doing today. So today, what actually I'll be talking about is what it means to set boundaries. Why is it important to set boundaries? Strategies for setting boundaries. Now, caregivers continuously provide help for others who are unable to help themselves. Although the role is full of positive rewards and experience, the role can tax your well-being, as I said, both physically and mentally. Caregivers often feel pressure to do it all, sacrificing their own needs for those that they care for. Well, this comes from, most of the time, comes really from a place of love. It can lead to burnout, stress, and even resentment. Boundaries allows you to manage your energy, your time, and emotions more effectively so you can care for others without sacrificing your own mental health. When you're clear about your limits, it's easier to get the support you need and prevent feelings of being totally overwhelmed. One of the things I always talk about is accept your emotions, the good and the bad. Always acknowledge your emotions, because if you don't and you bury them, they're going to come back up again and haunt you. Many emotions flow to caregiver's mind while providing aid. The positive side of the role, the positive side includes feelings of love, as I said, gratitude and satisfaction. Most caregivers feel comfortable and proud to own these emotions. On the other hand, they experience shame when engaging with bad feelings. Portraying anything other than pure enjoyment generates guilt in caregivers. It feels safer to hide those bad feelings. Sure, there is kind of a selfish Mother Teresa fantasy ideal to live up to as a caregiver. But in reality, caregivers commonly feel justified anger, resentment, and frustration about their situation. It's easy to feel inadequate when you can barely take care of yourself, in addition to caregiving responsibilities that you have. That is why you need to set boundaries in order to maintain your well being and, believe it or not, the well being of the person you're caring for. Let's go to the next slide, please. So what is the definition of boundaries? Does setting boundaries always mean saying no? Boundaries can be another word for setting limits or recognizing what you can and cannot do as a caregiver. As well, setting boundary means recognizing that you are a separate person from the care receiver and that you have your own needs. I always talk about this. There's two people in this relationship. One does not outweigh the other. Setting boundaries does not necessarily mean saying no. It can also mean changing elements of your caregiving situation. Or it could mean saying no because you've just had enough. You can't take it anymore. You're overcommitted. Can leave serious effects on your well-being in general. When you do too much and have no respite, it can lead to stress, fatigue, anxiety, physical illness, depression. By learning to say no and setting boundaries, you can balance your life as well as be the caregiver that you want to be to the person you are caring for. Boundaries are your values, your needs, your preferences that you put into action. And I want to tell you that you deserve it. When I said that it also benefits the person you're caring for, because if you don't set boundaries and if you don't say no, you're just going to get more angry and more frustrated. And many times, let it out on the person that you're caring for. And that's something you do not want to do. And if for any reason you feel that way at this point, and maybe you yell at them a little bit too much, or even shake them or push them, whatever it is, it's time to get some help. Let's go to the next slide. What is it? Why is it necessary for caregivers to set boundaries? So you're going to say, well, you told us all about that already, but I'm going to go a little bit deeper. To prevent possible crisis or burnout by setting limits before things get out of hand. That's what I was trying to tell you, that really setting boundaries is kind of a safety guard against things just escalating. Maintaining the caregiver's own sense of identity and feel more in control of caregiving situation. And I'll talk more about how important it is for caregivers to allow the person you're caring for to maintain their independence. So really, whether you become a caregiver gradually or suddenly due to a crisis, whether you are a caregiver willingly or by default, taking care of yourself is as important as taking care of someone else. It's difficult to set boundaries with our loved ones, family, and friends, but learning to set boundaries is a sign of self-care and self-respect, okay? Setting boundaries can help you regain and maintain a sense of balance over your caregiving situation. When healthy boundaries are not established, feelings of disappointment and anger can build up, leaving caregivers exhausted and stressed. Establishing boundaries is essential, and making sure your caregiving relationship is mutual, respectful, supportive, and caring. What starts as a genuine sense of joy over caregiving can quickly turn into feelings of obligation and resentment. Not setting boundaries can lead to an unhealthy and toxic relationship. Insisting that your loved one change their behavior is an exercise that will surely fail, especially if you're caring for someone with dementia. They will not change. The only control you have is setting boundaries that support you. You need to decide what behaviors you are willing and not willing to tolerate from others. So we'll go to the next one. Next slide, please. So how does a caregiver know when it's the time to set boundaries? What warning signs should a caregiver look for? And I do want to say, if this is the beginning of your journey, you can set boundaries right from the beginning. And maybe in a way, I should have done that as well. But I was just too involved, too caring, too concerned, too loving, all those things. You do not have to wait for a crisis to develop. Warning signs include, again, very much what I said, feeling overwhelmed, out of control, giving up activities that you really enjoyed, responsibilities, feelings like your entire life is revolving around the care receiver. So, having said that, all those warning signs, what I want to ask you is, ask yourself, when was the last time you considered your needs? If you can remember the last time you slept properly, ate adequately, exercised, went for a coffee with a friend, or just went for a walk, or did not feel guilty about wanting to be away from the person you are caring for. And all those feelings of sadness, being anxious, just feeling that this is just way too much. I really had enough. Healthy boundaries set, lets you maintain an emotional connection with your person that you're caring for, believe it or not, because you're allowing yourself to take care of yourself. And self-care is so very important for caregivers, especially when you come to the point that you no longer feel that you can continue caring for that individual in the way that you want to care for them. So we're going to go to the next slide. And remember in the beginning, I said that one of the most difficult things for me was to set boundaries as a caregiver to my mother. It was very hard. And here are some ideas, things that you should think about, because there is a sense of responsibility, obviously. And maybe there's more kids in the family, but you're the only one that stepped up to it. So there could be a lack of choices or other care options. But for me, it had to do with the fact that I truly believe that no one could take care of my mother the way I can. Okay? So I had to accept the fact that as long as she wasn't at risk, and maybe they didn't do it exactly the way I did it, it was okay. But it took me a long time to get there. So don't blame yourself. I just want you to kind of understand and think for yourself. And I'm going to ask you that question in a little while. So the thing is that really caregivers often struggle to set boundaries because of the complex mix of emotions, like guilt. That's a big one. Fear of upsetting the person that you're caring for, a desire to seem completely devoted to the person. As well, they may feel that they are abandoning that individual. And then the whole idea of what will other people think of me, family members and friends. They may think less of me if all of a sudden I am setting boundaries and I am saying no. So what I would really like to do at this time, can anyone share with us other reasons why you are having a difficult time setting boundaries or saying no? I'd love to hear from you. And you don't have to show your face, you don't have to show your name. Just share with us so we can really have a meaningful conversation.
All right, everybody, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and I'll be more than happy to talk to you. If you don't have a mic, you can always type it out in the chat box. I know in my case, I am the caregiver for my mother as well. After all these years, I've had to put boundaries on our relationship. We don't live together. We are in the same city, but sometimes for emergencies, she waits for me to go pick her up. Whereas my brother lives with her, and my brother could easily take her to wherever she needs to go, whether the hospital or the overnight clinic, and then I would meet them there. That recently happened a couple of years back because situation. High blood pressure went up. I had to go pick her up and take her to the hospital to get everything sorted out. So after that, I put the boundary. I told her I love you, but it makes no sense for me to drive to your place, whereas I can meet you at the hospital. And it saves a lot of time for you and for me. So boundaries are a good thing and it helps with your sanity.
Thank you, Minerva, for sharing that. Thank you. Does anybody else want to tell us why are you reluctant or apprehensive? I see something on the chat.
Yes, Laura put, my mom keeps telling me I am treating her like a child. My mother doesn't make smart decisions and only wants to do what she wants. She refuses to use a walker or a cane and use her oxygen. She has fallen 3 times already.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. That must be extremely stressful for you. But it seems that setting boundaries at this time would be difficult for you in the sense that it seems, I don't know your mother, but it seems that she really needs to be seen by her doctor if all these things are happening, if something has changed in her behavior. So doing these things appears to me that something else might be going on. So I can understand where setting boundaries with her at this time would be difficult. I'm not sure if she has cognitive difficulties or it's just physical. But if something has changed so drastically, you need assistance. You cannot do this on your own. I would suggest that you take her to her physician, to her primary care, and explain to him what's going on. Thank you, though, for sharing that.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura. Anyone else? Peer pressure, family members counting on one person in particular to take charge. Yes.
That happens very, very often, I have to tell you. And the only thing I can say is that's why I'm here today, to let you know that if it's becoming too difficult for you to continue, it's not about what, people will take advantage, unfortunately, sometimes. It's up to you to be able to say, I'm sorry, but I cannot do that. Saying no does not have to be an argument. You could sit down with whoever family members that are around. And I talk about it later. I'm going to give you lots of good tips of what you need to do and how to do it. But at the end of the day, it just comes down to you. Nobody can make you set boundaries. Nobody can make you say no. But you have to recognize that if you don't and things are becoming too difficult, they're just going to escalate and get out of control. So hang in here, don't leave. I will give you lots of good tips about how to really set boundaries.
And Michelle wrote, both my mother and grandfather passed away last year. That understandably left a void in my father, but he views me as a substitute for them. And he is resistant to allow others in. That's so much pressure, and we were never close prior to this. I am trying, but unrealistic for him to expect me to be always available.
Thank you so much for sharing. And you are absolutely right. So you have to think about, why am I feeling so ambivalent? Is it because you're feeling guilty? Don't feel guilty. Because I think it's important for you to be honest with your father if he's cognitively alert and is able to understand, to explain to him that you do have your own life, that you love him, very much what Minerva said to her mother. I care about you, I love you, and be very specific. And we're going to talk about that. You need to be able to tell people, this is what I can do, this is what I cannot do, and not feel guilty. They may be upset with you in the beginning, but it's okay. They'll get used to it.
You for that. And then the last comment that came in is from Lucinda. I am new to the caregiver role, but notice my husband often gets mad at me because I love being in the yard. And I think he fears that if something happens to me, what will happen to him? And gently explain that I need to get out and do what I love, which is working on the yard.
Thank you for that. That's a perfect, perfect example. And you said that, you had the answer yourself. You said he might be afraid that if I'm not around, I think it's important to ask him that question. Ask him why. Why are you so afraid for me to be, or you don't have to use the word afraid. Why is it bothering you that I'm going out in the garden when I enjoy it so much? Or possibly, can you join me and put a chair out for the person? I don't know physically what they're capable or not capable to do, but come and join me. I think it's important for you to really understand. And if the fact is that, let's say he does say, I'm afraid that if you're out there and if I fall, well, you can look at it and say, okay, so let's see, what can we do about it? There can always be a bell that the person can ring. There can always be a lifeline that the person can wear. You can always put something in place to make that person feel a little bit more comfortable with the fact. But at the end of the day, I want to tell you, no matter what you put in, as long as the person that you're leaving there alone is not at risk, you owe it to yourself to do the things that are meaningful to you. Because if you don't, resentment will come in. I guarantee you, anger will come in. And what I really want to avoid is that your relationship sort of deteriorates. If you don't set boundaries and say no, it's not going to get better. Okay, great. So we can move forward because there's a lot of tips that I would like to share with you. So we can go to the next one. So let's look at that. So what are some of the steps for setting boundaries? How can caregivers help themselves set boundaries? Give yourself, the most important thing is, please give yourself permission to set limits. You are allowed and entitled. Setting limits or saying no does not mean you are abandoning the care receiver or shrinking responsibilities. Setting boundaries simply means that you want certain things to change. That's what it all means. All right. So if we go to the next slide. So I want to talk about 9 ways to set boundaries as a caregiver. I did a lot of research on this session and I found this great article, and we have the article in my reference, so you can always go back to it. So I cannot take very much credit for all of this because it was written by Stephanie in Oxford in 2023. Some things you can modify. But I do want to say that these tips are really good for whether you're living with the person or whether the person is living alone, okay? So we're going to start with let go of the guilt. All right. So when your loved one needs help, leaving them can be very hard. And even if you need to take a break, be kind to yourself. It's understandable if you have complicated feelings like guilt, helplessness, resentment, or grief. No matter how much you do for your loved one, it can be hard to let go of the feeling that you could be doing more and taking care of your own needs. Like going for coffee with a friend can feel selfish. And you're thinking, well, how can I go and have fun when the person is staying at home? But you're allowed to feel that way. You have a life as well. The Family Caregiver Alliance recommends coping with guilt by reframing the situation. The truth is that no one can be perfect all the time, including you. You can't be there every moment of the day or be in a good mood for your loved one at all times. You need to learn how to say, I need, or I regret, I cannot do that. So the thing is, you need to set boundaries to defend what is important to you. So you need to identify it. So first and foremost, define and share your limits. You have to be able to say, I need adequate rest to yourself. Okay. You have to look at it. What is it that you need to set boundaries? I need enough sleep. I need to exercise. I need to eat more nutritiously. I need social support. I need social connection with others besides the person I'm caring for. I need personal care. I need time for myself. Now, for each one of you, it might be different. It might be all of the above that I just said. but you need to really sit down and write it down. What do I need? If you don't meet those needs for yourself, I guarantee you that your health can be negatively impacted. And after a while, you may not be able to provide the level of care for the person that you're caring for. It may help to set aside blocks of time in your caregiving schedule just for you. Once you're clearly identified the blocks of time you need for yourself, tell the person you're caring for that, be honest with them. Tell them, I do need a little bit of time for myself. We're going to go into it a little bit deeper as well. You'll also need to instill maintaining your boundaries when something or someone challenges them, because the person may challenge you and they may say, well, I need you, you're being selfish. They might confront you. So it's important to be kind. Assertive language can help you stick to your limits in a way that can feel good about trying, about telling them. And as I said before, I think it's important to start saying I statements. I need to do that for myself. So defining your needs. What I would suggest is that you actually write them down for yourself, so they're very, very clear. Let's go to number 3. It says take up a hobby. Okay. A hobby, whether an old one or a new one, can bring you a sense of personal fulfillment outside of your job as a caregiver. No matter what the activity, it can be a rewarding challenge. So all of a sudden you might say, what is she talking on? Get a hobby. I'm using hobby as a way to show you that if you've given up something in your life that you really enjoyed, whether it was playing cards with friends or whether it was meeting a friend once a week to just have a cup of coffee and discuss, go back to that. And when it comes to boundaries, a hobby that happens at a set time or a meeting that you were meeting a friend regularly on a weekly basis can help motivate you to set aside a designated block of time for you, or identify that you need to go for, it could be simply as going for a walk. So once you've got all those ideas, all those needs, you wrote them down, you're going to have to start to implement them. So the next thing could be set a schedule, including breaks. Setting your caregiving hours and a break on a calendar for all to see. So put it down, write it down. It's important. Having your break and writing will help you stick to the plan. And now this is something what one of the participants was talking about. Encourage your loved one to maintain their independence for as long as possible. Many times caregivers do things that they shouldn't at the time because it just takes a little bit more energy to say no. So as a caregiver, you help your loved one with tasks they can no longer do, right? Themselves, whatever it might be. But they may still be capable of doing many things independently, which can help them feel a sense of dignity, control, and enjoyment. So before you jump in to assist, ask yourself, do they really need me? Give them space to do things independently unless you observe that they really need your help. Having them perform some everyday tasks can give you more freedom and more time for yourself. For example, it may take them longer to dress, okay? It's just easier for you to come over and do it. But I encourage you to let them do as much as possible for themselves for as long as possible, because that also alleviates some of your own stress. Now, the other thing is assist. There's a lot of techniques that and aids out there that can help. And obviously, I'm sure you've looked at the bathroom, the shower seats, the grab bars, raised toilet. By keeping them independent, there's jars openers, reaching tools, pill organizers, clothes that are easy to get into. All these things will help you in the long run to set a little bit more time for yourself. So while they're dressing themselves and it's taking a half an hour versus 10 minutes, go over, listen to the radio, open a book, take some breaths, whatever it is, give yourself that time. Plan for your absence. That's important. You know, the thing is that it's really important that they know that you're not abandoning them. It can be easy to fall into a routine of canceling your plans or not making them because your loved one has unexpected needs. Think ahead about what you can do now to ensure your loved one is cared for when you aren't there. That's especially if you don't live with the person. So here are some ideas. Plan to order groceries or have pharmacy items delivered when you don't have time to shop for them. You can download an ordering app and have it ready to go when you need it. Connect with ride services to help you get your loved one to their appointments. There's a lot of services out there. Have 1 or 2 meal options on hand for your loved one. When you aren't available to cook, you might stock the freezer with prepared meals, order favorite takeout food, or ask a family or member to cook for them. It's okay to ask other people. Connect with 1 or 2 other people who can fill in for you. So if somebody who wants to help you, accept it. But it's also okay to ask other family members to help out. Set up a personal emergency response system if you need to be connected. So obviously your cell phone should be on and you can always be available. The other thing is tap into caregiver resources. There are a lot of resources in your community, and we talk a lot about them. And go out and find out what's there for you to help you. Now, one of the other things is connect with other family caregivers as you're doing today. It's so important to listen to what other people are doing and other suggestions that people have and allowing you to maintain and to have boundaries. And one of the most important things is accept help. When a trusted friend or family member offers to help, take them up on it and ideally give them a specific job to do. And if you are going to take some respite, whether you're hiring somebody private, if you can afford it, you can also make a schedule, how to give the medications, how to help with personal care, food routines, what their preferences are, etc., etc. So having said all that, I really want to have the opportunity so we can talk a little bit more and really explore it. So let's go to the next slide, please. So who might the caregiver need to communicate with in order to set boundaries? What kinds of things should be the caregiver, should the caregiver explain? Making changes will likely involve communication with others who are involved in the caregiving situation, as well as the care receiver. Okay? Now, what do I mean by that? The fact is that if the person is cognitively alert and able to understand, you really have to sit down with them and you really have to tell them how you're feeling, that it's really difficult, that you're tired, that you need time away. And you can tell them that it's so important that you want to continue caring for them, but we have to come to some sort of an understanding. The other people that might be someone that you have to talk to is other family members. Don't assume that they really know what you're going through. It's important to set a family meeting. Write everything down that you've been going through, the difficulties, all the tasks that you do, and really let them know in a very kind, don't accuse anyone of not being there or being angry with anyone. Just tell them that really it's come to the point where I no longer could continue doing this. And I really would like to set some boundaries, but I need your help. I want you to understand that. Can any of you step up to the plate? So these are the things that it is important to explain. And when you are explaining these things, it's also important to take into consideration that when you are a caregiver and doing everything, other people just assume that you're okay, unless you're able to explain to them how you're feeling at that particular time. So let's go to the next slide, please. So here are kind of my final comments, and so we can talk a little bit more. The care you give yourself is the care you give to your loved one. You deserve to exercise, sleep right, have hobbies, and enjoy your life. Take time to reach out to your community, family, friends, and supportive peers. Boundaries can support you. They are meant to protect you and the person you care for, to preserve your caregiving relationship and create a more functional partnership. By showing the courage to value your own needs, you enhance the quality of care you provide. And what I want to do is, if we can go to the next slide. Now, questions, let's have a meaningful conversation. I want you to really look at that and to really come out and ask all the questions that are important to you. Because as I said in the beginning, this was the hardest thing for me to do, was to set boundaries with my mother. Most of you don't know it. I'm an only child. So it was even more difficult for me because there really wasn't anyone else. But I did have to do it. I had to do it for my own sake, for my family, for the children I still had at home, and for the work that I was doing. But more important than that, it was important for me to do that for my relationship with my mother, because I wanted to make sure I loved her dearly. She was a great mom, but there were a lot of things that needed to be done physically and cognitively. And I knew that if I didn't set limits for myself and boundaries, I would really have a hard time continuing. I would always care for her and wouldn't abandon her, but my anger and some of my resentment was building in, and that wasn't good for our relationship. So having said that, I was as open as I can be with you. I'd like you to be open and ask the questions or share with us. Thank you.
Alrighty, going back to the chats, Lucinda said, I was thinking about asking him, so I will follow through. Andre says, I think the recent events surrounding the actor Gene Hackman's death definitely reinforced the need to have people around us to help.
That was a terrible thing. That was the actor, right? That had died, and so did his wife, right? Many
Yes.
questions about that, even myself, like isn't it interesting that the first thing I thought about, well, where were his family? I didn't know if he had children or not. And then I kind of looked it up. It is important to have people around you. There's no doubt about you. So setting limits does not mean that you're leaving. Saying no does not mean that you're not going to take responsibility to make sure that even when you're not there, the person is safe and that you've taken every precaution. Setting boundaries and saying no is your way of protecting yourself, but more important, protecting them and your relationship with that. Unfortunately, I have to tell you that when I was seeing clients, how many times when caregivers were, remember I talked about bad feelings, right? It's okay when you're loving and caring, and then all of a sudden you're feeling stressed and angry and really so frustrated that you want to scream and cry. Unfortunately, when you don't deal with those emotions, they can escalate. And I hate to say this, but many times caregivers found themselves in a situation where they were a little bit abusive. Okay. And that, can you imagine the guilt that goes along with that? So setting boundaries is prevention. Setting boundaries is not just because you need, you're being selfish. It really is a preventive action that you take to prevent bad things happening to you and to prevent bad things happening to the person you're caring for and maintaining a good relationship. I see that there was another.
Yes. Ellen had asked to see the previous slide, so I went ahead and did that. She also said, my mom has always been the one in control over all the family's activities and expects others to go along with what she wants and or thinks that what she wants means everyone wants it too. She is the authority, which makes even the idea of setting boundaries with her intimidating.
Thank you so much. That's so honest to be able, yes, you're absolutely right, because being a caregiver, remember when I said sometimes you do it willingly, sometimes you have no choice, sometimes it's by default, sometimes it's for all these reasons. And it doesn't mean that you had a good relationship with that person to begin with. So you're carrying a lot of emotions and feelings when you're going into caregiving situations that come up from the past. And it sounds as if your mother was very domineering, and the little girl in you is still dealing with those feelings of that. Well, I mean, you have a choice. We all have choices to make, right? There's always a choice to make. If this is really bothering you and you feel that it's not giving you any joy and pleasure in being a caregiver, I don't know if your mother has cognitive issues or not. You have to think of yourself first and foremost. You're not going to give up caring for your mom, but you have to stand up for yourself. Remember, we talked about setting boundaries is respecting yourself, respecting your needs. It's not going to be an easy thing to do, and it is intimidating, but you have to think, you have to outweigh is it worth to just continue and be quiet? That's a choice. But if it's too difficult for you to continue and you're finding you're really upset about it, you have to make a decision. And setting boundaries can be little steps. You don't have to do it all or nothing. It could be one thing that you're going to set boundary about, something that you really feel you need to do that. And that could be, I don't know whether you live with your mom or not, or how often you visit. It could be you're going there every day, or you might say to yourself, this is important, I need some time alone. And if you live with her, you might say, you know what, I need to get out of here for an hour or whatever. It's not easy, but it's how you say it. So the thing is to be able to practice it before. You don't want to be angry. You have to, as I said, you have to be very honest and say, I really need time for myself. I'm tired. It's too much. Not an easy task. And if you really feel that you can't do it on your own, I would advise to go and see someone to help you get to the point where you can actually say that to your mom and set boundaries.
Andre also put, yes, Gene Hackman, he has children from another marriage, but both him and his wife love their privacy. The autopsy revealed that his wife died about a week before him, and he possibly did not even notice she was gone. A real tragedy.
Oh,
Definitely.
definitely. So, yeah. And so, just getting away from that for a moment, when we talk about setting boundaries, just to let you know, at one point I was feeling like I was spinning out of control, working full time, family, 2 kids, the school, the this, the that, being an only child. And the thing was that I did have to reach out. I reached out to to friends that I trusted, and I felt that I needed to talk about that. So it's a one step at a time. It's not like all of a sudden I'm doing this. It's a process that you go through. That's why, remember when I said always recognize your feelings. Your feelings are going to tell you where you're at. They are the barometer for you. So if you're constantly sad, if you're constantly angry, if you're constantly frustrated, stop and listen to them and say, where is this all coming from? Where is all this coming from? I'm allowed to feel this way. I'm feeling it. And try and recognize where it is. And then by acknowledging your feelings, the first step to actually getting somewhere and doing something about it.
And something related to what happened with Gene Hackman that I would also recommend. If you're in a situation where for your own sanity, you've had to cut yourself from your loved one, be there for the person that's now watching out for them. You've been there before. You know how the situation can be, but it's now your turn to help be supportive of whoever's watching over them now. Just a check-in every once in a while. Not saying that you have to have contact totally with your loved one if you don't want to, but just be there for the person that's now watching over them. Check in every once in a while. Um,
That's a good point, Minerva. You're right, but I do want to go back just and kind of close the chapter with what happened in that very horrible situation. You know, we can never put blame on anyone because we don't know the circumstances of what went on. So it's easy to say, well, where were the family? Because we don't know, as somebody pointed out, they wanted their privacy. But I do agree with you. Check in with people. If you know someone is a caregiver to someone else, check in with them. It's a wonderful point you made.
Ellen posted, and everyone, if you do want to share something, you can unmute yourself. It doesn't have to be strictly in chat. Ellen put, thank you. I have noticed some memory lapses, but she denies it and gets upset. I don't live with her, but when I visit, I want to cut my visit short. I thank you for your excellent insights and strategies. I need to work up my courage to set limits with her.
Thank you for sharing. And you know what you said is so, I'm sure most caregivers feel that way. As you know, you're not living with her, you want to cut it short. It's not easy. So let me just give you a bit of a hint. If you do want to maintain their, even if it's a short visit, you're allowed to feel that way. But if you can find an activity that you can do with your, I think it's your mother, might be helpful for both of you. And this is not the first time I say this. One of the wonderful activities I did with my mother, she loved to have her nails done. So I would bring an assortment of colors and she would choose the color. I would do her nails and we reminisced about the past. And before I knew it, the hour was up. She was happy. I was content. So if you could bring an activity to when you're visiting, if you're not living with the person and it's difficult because they have cognitive impairment or they're complaining all the time, sort of distract them with an activity, whether it's listening to music, whether it's something else, whatever it might be.
Okay, something else that Andre put, you have to be strong as possible and respect yourself enough to believe what you are doing is your very best. And if you want to endure, you have to invest in yourself. It is difficult to face your loved one's criticism, even if you know the situation.
Amazing, Ray. I couldn't have said it better. Thank you so much. Yeah, it all boils down to recognizing your own needs. And you know what? It's if when we're caregiving, certain people can't do it. And when you're a caregiver, it's because you most of the time is that you feel you want to do it, you care for that individual. So it's normal. But if you don't take, and it's not only about caregiving, it's general. You could be working and maybe your boss isn't treating you as well, or things don't go as well as you want. You have to look at yourself and you have to say, you have to respect yourself and be able to say, this is what I need. Now, again, confrontation does not have to be bad. You can, you can have a discussion with someone and not have to yell and not have to scream and not have to even cry and explain what are your needs. You owe it to yourself to be able to do that, not only as a caregiver, but with your children or with the person you're with, even with friends. It's very important. People will respect you when you are honest and let them know if things aren't working the way you want them and it's too much for you to handle.
Definitely. And since I'm looking at the time, I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll. This is how we can see what your thoughts are on the presentation. If there's anything you would like to see in the future, it won't take you too long. Just go ahead and fill it out. Michelle wrote, thank you for today's presentation. I have to leave. Have a great day, all. And then Andre also put, thank you very much, Lucy. Once again, down to earth, objective, realistic, and applicable. Indeed, diversion, distraction, significant occupation. Patsy, I see you unmuted yourself. Go ahead.
Are you there, Patsy?
Oh, yes, I am.
Okay.
My husband is in a memory care facility. He was diagnosed 13 years ago, and I had to place him in a memory care facility um, a little over a year ago. And I have been visiting him all that time, 5 days a week, for 3 hours each time. And I recently hit the wall. I just had one day when I was so tired, so frustrated, and I said I can't do this anymore. And so I talked to my therapist and the hospice nurse. They both recommended that I cut back to visiting 3 days a week, which I've done for 2 weeks, but it's been very, very difficult for me. I feel like I'm letting him down. I just struggling with it.
Thank you so much for sharing. And this is so, you're so not alone in this at all. It is hard. But remember the two people? There's two of you here.
Yeah,
Your needs do not outweigh his, and vice versa. You need to take care of yourself. And it's not easy because you got into a routine. It's hard to
yeah.
give yourself some time to get used to this. I think 3 times a week is more than most people can even do, and to stay as long as you do. You're not abandoning him. As long as you feel keep reminding yourself, he's in good hands. Others are taking care of him. So when you do come to see him and you are rested and you feel better, your interaction with him will be on a more positive level. Give yourself time. Don't give up on this. Promise?
I won't. I won't. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you so much for sharing because others are feeling just as you do.
Good.
Oh, I'm sorry, Patsy. Go ahead.
Oh, no, no, I'm finished.
Okay. Laura went ahead and put in the chat. Are you still a caregiver when your loved one is in a nursing home or memory care?
100%, maybe sometimes even more, because that guilt kicks in as you heard before. So there's always kind of a need. I should be there a little bit. Yes, you are a caregiver. You are. It's different though. And for many caregivers, it takes a long time to get used to the idea, and they go beyond what they need to do. So again, limits are so important. You have to know what your life is all about. I mean, I had to set limits because in the reality, I I could only do what I could do within 24 hours and be able to sleep and go to work, take care of my family. And so you know what your limits are. You are a caregiver, but you also have to set limits. And I'm so glad that we got that you heard from a caregiver who said that she had to set limits because she just was enough was enough.
And you have to keep in mind also, sometimes when we don't take care of ourselves, sadly, we end up being the ones that leave first before our caregivers. So it's a matter of your well-being and being able to accept that you love yourself enough to put the limits. Laura said again, I am the family caregiver educator and I want to reach out to families out there, but the state, I want to reach out to everyone. I believe they are. Attend family council meetings and train, but now they are questioning whether or not they're still caregivers. And Lucinda said, thank you for the information.
Well, yes. I mean, if somebody is placed, and look, it's a choice that you make. If you are still a caregiver, if you want to be, right? There's always choices in life. So many times, as I said before, a lot of caregivers even have a harder time when the person is in long-term care. There's an adjustment period. All of a sudden you're alone. Yeah, you have more time to yourself. But remember, the guilt kicks in. The relationship that you had with that person is very important. Whether it was, if it was a good one or it was a bad one, the history you have with that person. All these things come to play. I am not saying that you need to set boundaries unless you feel that enough is enough, unless you feel that this is too much for you to bear, that it's having an impact on your physical well-being, meaning you're really feeling tired, you're fatigued, you're not getting sleep, you're anxious, you're angry. It could mean like you've given up your friends, you aren't socializing, you isolated yourself. These are all risk factors for your mental and physical well-being. Don't take a chance on that. It's your life. You have a right to live your life and to enjoy. Unfortunately, sometimes things seem unfair. They are unfair, but that doesn't mean that you have to stop living your life as well and continue being a caregiver.
Definitely. Candace wrote, I have been caregiving for my mother for 5 years now. I now visit 7 days a week. She expects it, and I have not been able to break this routine.
That's a big one. So what I would say, if you cannot break it and you 7 days a week, sit down and take a piece of paper. I'm looking at the time. Write down how you're actually feeling. Are you feeling angry? Are you feeling sad? Are you overwhelmed? Put those down and say to yourself, do I deserve a life? What do I want to do? Now, setting boundaries, as you said, you can't do it because there's that expectation. I will highly recommend that you see someone. You need to work through that process. Why does your mother have such control over you? It's not from that being a caregiver, it's from the past. And you might need to really talk about that and set little baby steps. So I don't have a solution, but I think you do need to deal with that.
And with that, I am looking at the time. I would like to thank Lucy for this wonderful presentation. I would also like to thank the WellMed Charitable Foundation for Caregiver Teleconnection Program for sponsoring and providing these classes for you. If you would like to register for any upcoming sessions, go to our website, www.caregiverteleconnection.org. You will find our calendar, the recorded sessions, and the upcoming classes. If you, for any reason, have any problems with the site, go ahead and give us a call at 866-390-6491. I'd be more than happy to help you out. And just a reminder, the session is being recorded, and if you registered, you will be receiving the presentation shortly. If you did not register and someone just sent you the link, go ahead and give me a call at 866-390-6491, and I'd be more than happy to get that sent out to you. And with that, Lucy, any last words you would like to say
All I
to
can
everyone?
Caregivers, please take care of yourself and be well. And
Thank you very much. It's very helpful.
take care. Thank you. All the very best.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, and have a great day. Do something nice for yourself.